My mom decided to give our special heirloom necklace to my stepsister because she thinks I'm a complete flop as her daughter. I simply told my grandma about it. Now the whole situation has my mom completely unhinged thanks to grandma's announcement at the family gathering. Hi everyone, I am Sophia, 26 female, and my life has been full of ups and downs in the last month, and I need help with your suggestions. So, my parents got divorced when I was just 8 years old. They were always fighting, and my house would always be in chaos. Even though I was very young, I still remember how the environment of our house was and how I would listen to my parents yelling at each other. I remember hiding under my bed a lot, just trying to find some peace and quiet. It was tough feeling so scared and sad in my own home. However, when my parents got divorced, I was absolutely in shambles. I didn't understand why mommy and daddy didn't want to live with each other anymore. My daddy got full custody, and I would visit my mom on some weekends. It was really hard. I remember feeling confused about why things had to change and wondering if somehow it was my fault. I loved both my parents so much, and seeing them apart broke my heart. At school, I started acting out to try and get attention. Sometimes kids would tease me for not having both my parents at things like school plays, and that hurt. My dad tried his best, but he was working all the time, and I felt like he didn't have enough time for me. I spent a lot of evenings alone, eating dinner in front of the TV and trying to figure out how to do my homework all by myself. It was lonely. My mom, Audrey, 51 female, eventually got married, and that's how I ended up with a stepsister, Michelle, 28 female. Now, the one point here to remember is that my mom is very religious. She's also very strict about her religious beliefs. Her new family was also very religious. Since I was living with my dad, I never was part of it. My mom's idea of fun was going to church on Sunday mornings and Sunday evenings too. There were midweek prayer meetings and Bible studies at our home. When I would go stay over, I felt like all they ever talked about was God and all the rules you had to follow. They couldn't watch certain movies, listen to most music, and definitely no dancing. Forget going out on Saturday nights. That was for hanging with a church youth group. Honestly, it felt a little suffocating to me. It's not like I wasn't a good kid, but everyone at my mom's house seemed so serious. Meanwhile, at my dad's, we went to baseball games and had pizza nights, or sometimes just chilled and watched movies. That life felt way more normal to me. Michelle and I never really got super close. I mean, she was nice, but there was a bit of awkwardness since technically we were family, but didn't grow up together. Plus, she was so big into all the religious stuff I wasn't into at all. Sometimes, I felt like she and my mom would exchange judging glances if I mentioned something from my regular life. It wasn't mean, but it made me feel like an outsider. I never felt at home at my mom's place. I was happy with the world that my dad and I were living in. He wasn't perfect, and sometimes things were a little messy, but it was our mess. We'd order takeout on Friday nights and make giant snacks of pancakes on the weekends. And I knew he'd always have my back, no matter what. Another person who I really was close to was my grandma, Patricia, 73 female. I was the apple of her eye. Since I was her only grandchild, I was definitely spoiled. She was always taking me for ice cream or letting me have sleepovers at her place where we'd make cookies and watch old movies late into the night. Grandma would pick me up from school sometimes, and we'd go to the park, just the two of us. She was like my other mom, always telling me how special I was and how much she loved me. I know my dad worried sometimes that my grandma was spoiling me too much, but I loved it. She made me feel safe and important, even though it was tough sometimes, feeling all torn between my parents. I was lucky to have my dad and my grandma. They made sure I knew I was loved. However, life hit me hard when my dad had a heart attack and he died. I was only 16 at the time. It happened so suddenly. One minute we were having dinner, talking about baseball season, and the next he was clutching his chest and everything turned into a nightmare. In the hospital waiting room, I just clung to my grandma, sobbing. I couldn't imagine my life without him. Losing him was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I felt all lonely, totally lost. School was a blur. I couldn't focus, and the little problems I used to care about seemed so pointless. My grandma was my rock. She moved in with me to make sure I wasn't completely alone in that big house. She would cook my favorite foods and just sit with me in the evenings when the sadness was the worst. But my mom, she wasn't much help. It was shocking really. Even after my dad had died, she could not stop saying bad things about him. She would make these little comments about his mistakes or bring up stuff from their divorce like it was still a fresh fight. It was so hurtful. I didn't understand why she couldn't just let it go, even in death. All I wanted was to remember the good things about my dad, the times he made me laugh, and all the ways he'd shown me he loved me. I didn't need my mom poisoning those memories with her bitterness. After everything was over, I moved into my grandma's place. My mom actually refused to take me in. It stung, honestly. I mean, I was her daughter too. But at that moment, it felt like she'd completely chosen her new life over me. So I packed up everything I could fit into my old car and moved into my grandma's cozy little house. For a long time, I was still struck with grief. My grandma tried everything, making my favorite dinners, finding old photo albums for us to flip through, and even suggesting little outings to get me out of the house. But it was hard, knowing that my dad wasn't ever going to walk through the door or call to ask how my day was, felt unbearable. Some days, all I wanted to do was just crawl back into bed and shut out the world. Then I would remember my dad, how hard he'd worked to give me a good life, how proud he'd be of any little thing I accomplished. I decided to focus on my studies and put everything I had into it. I wanted to make him feel proud, wherever he was. I was determined to get into a good college. The dusty textbooks became my lifeline. I would stay up late into the night, poring over equations and history essays. When I got stuck on a problem, instead of giving up, I would imagine my dad looking over my shoulder, that same slightly confused look on his face that would make me laugh. Then I would redouble my efforts and finally figure it out. Late at night, when I was supposed to be doing homework, but instead staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, my grandma would come and sit on my bed. She wouldn't even say much, just stroke my hair and maybe hum an old song. It wasn't a cure for the pain, but it helped, knowing I wasn't completely alone. All this time I was completely cut off from my mom. I wasn't visiting her on the weekends. When she would come to visit grandma, I would just shut myself in my room. It wasn't that I was trying to be difficult. Talking to her just brought up all this sadness and frustration. I could not understand her coldness towards me and the bad stuff she kept saying about my dad. However, what I also noticed at the time was just how close my mom and Michelle had gotten. They were kind of like the same person. Both had a lot of things in common. They loved being super organized, planning events, and baking Pinterest perfect cakes. I swear, sometimes when they would get together, they would even finish each other's sentences. Seeing their relationship made me feel even more like the odd one out in my own family. Michelle would drop by on her days off, all chirpy, and ask my mom about her day while they sipped tea at the kitchen table. I would stay upstairs, listening and wondering why it was so easy for them and so hard for my mom and me. Sometimes, a little jab of guilt would hit me. Maybe I should be making more of an effort, trying to be closer to them both. But then my mom would start talking about something that happened at church, the way some lady got the wrong casserole recipe for the potluck or whatever, and I would just roll my eyes and tune them out. That world wasn't mine, and I was starting to realize it was okay for it not to be. After I graduated from school, my hard work paid off and I got into the college of my dreams. I wanted to work as an engineer, and I got into one of the top colleges in the country. My grandma was beaming with pride, tears in her eyes. Even my mom seemed really happy at the graduation, hugging me and telling me how smart I was. For a moment, it felt like maybe things could be okay between us. The best part about this was that I didn't have to worry about any finances for school, as my dad had taken care of everything for me. He had set aside a big amount for my college, and combining that with the student aid I received, I was going to be able to attend without any financial burdens, like student loans. It was one last gift from him, a way to ensure I had all the opportunities he'd always wanted for me. The day I left for college, I was a bundle of nerves, excited for the new adventure, but also sad because I had gotten so much closer to my grandma over the years. We had developed our own little routines, movie nights on Wednesdays with microwave popcorn, walks to the little bakery on the corner for treats. I was going to miss her terribly. She assured me that she was going to be fine and told me to go and enjoy my life. "You've got big things ahead of you, Sophia," she said, her voice a little shaky. "Your dad would be bursting with pride. Now go on and make him proud." I hugged her tightly, promising to call every day, and then climbed into my packed-up car and left for college. Over the next 4 years, I barely had any contact with Mom, except when I heard the news about Michelle getting married. Surprise, surprise, I wasn't invited to her wedding, and according to my mom, it was only for a close family. I rolled my eyes. Honestly, I didn't care. College was consuming me. Tough engineering courses, late-night lab sessions, and trying to squeeze in a little bit of social life. However, during my 3rd year, my grandma told me that she was leaving the house and shifting to an assisted living facility. She explained that she is very old now, and it was getting difficult for her to move around the house and do basic things. It felt like a punch to the gut, another reminder that time was moving on and things wouldn't always stay the same. So whenever I had any free time from college, I would visit my grandma at her new place. It was nice and clean, and the staff was kind, but it wasn't home. I would help her unpack some boxes, or we'd play cards in the sunny common room. Sometimes, I would slip away and drive over to the old house just to sit in the garden for a while. It always felt a little empty and overgrown, but remembering all the good times with my dad there helped. I would check on things inside too, make sure everything was secure, and sometimes I would stay overnight when I needed a break from the noisy dorm room. Lying in my old bed, I could still picture my dad poking his head in to say goodnight all those years ago. There were times when I cried myself to sleep, missing him and wishing things were different. After I graduated, I was lucky enough to land a job right away. Years went by quickly, and now I have a high-paying job that keeps me busy, maybe too busy sometimes. I've had relationships in the past, a couple of serious ones, but I'm single at the moment. It turns out that focusing entirely on your career doesn't leave much space for romance. Who knew? I still visit my grandma whenever I get the chance. She's getting frail, and sometimes her memory is a little fuzzy, but her smile is still the same. I only see my mom during the holidays because that's when my grandma comes to her place to celebrate. It's civil. We make small talk, and I'll admit, Michelle's kids are actually adorable. They have no idea about the complicated family history, and I guess it's better that way. Sometimes I look back and think about how different it all turned out. If my dad was still here, I wonder what he'd think of the life I built. Would he be proud of me? I hope so. Would he have liked my latest boyfriend? Would he have teased me about working too hard? Definitely. I know I have been talking about the past a lot, but you need to know this to understand what happened that made me write this post. So, last Thanksgiving, when we were all at Mom's place, my grandma hadn't come yet. So it was as usual. My mom kept taunting me about being single and how I should look at Michelle, who has 2 kids now. "You know, Sophia," she started, with that critical tone I knew so well. "Michelle was your age when she got married. Now look at her. Such a beautiful family." I rolled my eyes. Here we go again. "Mom, I'm just 26 years old," I said for what felt like the millionth time. "I'm focusing on my career right now." She scoffed. "Your career isn't going to keep you warm at night, Sophia. And don't even try to tell me you're not lonely. Besides, your biological clock is ticking." I didn't even know what to say at this point. My biological clock? Was I supposed to start panicking and find the first random guy to marry just so I could have a baby before some imaginary deadline? The image of me speed dating flashed through my mind, and I couldn't help but laugh a little. "It's not funny, Sophia," she snapped. "You need to get serious about your life. Children are a blessing, and you're just being selfish." I told her that I didn't want to get into this at Thanksgiving and started using my phone, trying to tune her out. Then my mom dropped a bombshell. "Honestly, Sophia," she sighed, "I don't expect much from you anymore. Since you don't have any plans of getting married soon or starting your own family, I'm going to give our special heirloom necklace to Michelle." At first I was a little confused. I asked her which necklace she was talking about. "You know," she said, exasperation clear in her voice. "The pearl necklace. It was the necklace that has been in our family for generations. Every bride in our family has worn it on her wedding day. Grandma gave it to my mom, and she was supposed to give it to me." My heart sank. I'd always imagined wearing that necklace, feeling connected to all the women in the family who came before me. "But Mom, you can't do this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's supposed to belong to me." She scoffed. "And what? Leave it gathering dust in your jewelry box for the rest of your life? You've proven you're a complete flop as a daughter. At least Michelle will appreciate it. Have a family to pass it down to." The words stung like a slap. It was not enough that she'd barely been there for me after Dad died, or that she still found ways to criticize my life choices at every opportunity. Now she was taking away this special piece of family history just to, what, punish me? Make herself feel better about the perfect daughter she never got from me? I tried to reason with her. "Mom, come on, I'm young. I'll get married when I find the right person when I'm ready." But she wasn't interested in listening. Her eyes were already glazing over. That look she gets when she's decided she's right and nothing will change her mind. Just then the doorbell rang, saving me from another lecture. It was my grandma. Relief washed over me as she hugged me and settled into her usual armchair in the living room. She and my mom chatted for a while about holiday plans. Then Mom went back to the kitchen to check on the turkey. My grandma must have sensed something was wrong. With a gentle smile, she beckoned me over. "Sophia, sweetheart, what's got you looking so down?" I couldn't keep it any longer. The hurt, the unfairness of it all spilled out in a rush. My grandma listened without interrupting, her brow furrowed in concern. When I was finally done, she simply said, "Don't you worry, honey, I'll handle it." Part of me expected fireworks at the dinner table, a dramatic confrontation where my grandma defended me, but it never happened. The rest of the evening was strangely subdued, the necklace drama hanging in the air like an unspoken accusation. I was honestly a bit disappointed. Why hadn't she said anything in my defense? After the pumpkin pie and awkward goodbyes, I went back to my apartment. My grandma stayed with my mom for the night. I tossed and turned, the ache of disappointment lingering long after the last of the leftovers were packed away. I tried to forget about the whole necklace disaster until Christmas rolled around and I had to endure another stressful family gathering at my mom's place. I resolved to keep my head down and not say anything that might spark another argument. But then, as we were exchanging gifts, my grandma made her move. She handed me a small velvet-covered box. "For you, Sophia," she said with a twinkle in her eye. I opened it and found a key inside. Confused, I looked up at her. "What's this for, Grandma?" "It's for my house," she said with a gentle smile. "I'm giving it to you, dear." A wave of shock washed over me. "But Grandma, it's your house," I stammered. She patted my hand. "I've had a good long life there, Sophia, and now that I'm in assisted living, I've got no use for it. I want it to be a place where you can build your life, raise a family of your own." I was speechless. Tears started welling up in my eyes as a mix of overwhelming emotions hit me. I hugged my grandma tightly. "Thank you," I whispered. "This means the world to me." The house itself was special, a place filled with memories, but even more so, it was a symbol that my grandma believed in me, in my future, even when my own mother seemed to have lost faith. Mind you, even though my grandma wasn't very rich, the house she had was really big. It was a 4-bedroom house with a sprawling backyard, the kind of place where I could picture kids playing someday. Just as I was hugging my grandma, eyes still a little wet with happy tears, I heard my mother's sharp voice cut through the warm moment. "Mama, how could you do this? This is ridiculous. That house belongs to me." She sounded outraged, as if my grandma giving me her own property was a personal attack. My grandma wasn't having it. Her voice was firm, laced with a disappointment that made me flinch a little. "I'm disappointed in you, Audrey," she said. "I still remember how you refused to take Sophia in after her father died, and then to give away the heirloom necklace that was meant for her to your stepdaughter, no less." My grandma reached for the necklace, which I noticed Michelle was still wearing. "I believe that should only be worn on your wedding day," she said. "May I have it back, please?" My mom went red in the face, spluttering excuses and saying that what my grandma was doing wasn't fair. But it was clear that power had shifted. My grandma wasn't the sweet old lady who let people walk all over her anymore. A flicker of worry crossed my mom's face as she finally slipped off the necklace and reluctantly handed it over. My grandma tucked it away safely into her purse and then looked at me. "Don't worry, darling. I'll keep it safe until you're ready to wear it." Honestly, the whole scene felt a little surreal, like something out of a soap opera. It was Christmas chaos, but strangely, I felt a sense of satisfaction. My grandma had finally stood up for me in a way that I always wished she would. The rest of the day was weird. I went back to my place eventually, and my grandma went back to her senior home. However, I did feel a little guilty as it also ruined my niece's Christmas. Even they could sense the tension in the home. Do you guys think my grandma shouldn't have done this? Do you think she took it too far? Hi guys, I know it's only been 2 days since I made the post, but I have an update. Since I still had time off from work, I figured I'd go explore my new territory, Grandma's house. I wanted to see it with fresh eyes, as the owner, imagining how I might fix it up and make it my own. Pulling up to the driveway, a jolt of surprise ran through me. My mom's car was parked there. I could feel my stomach tightened. She had a spare key, and I knew exactly why she let herself in. I found her inside, pacing around the living room, as if inspecting it for signs of disrepair. "What the heck are you doing here?" I asked, barely containing my frustration. "Don't get your panties in a twist," she snapped. "Grandma's clearly lost her marbles. Giving you this whole house is ridiculous." "Grandma's perfectly fine," I retorted, anger flaring now. "And she gave me this house because she loves me. Something you obviously wouldn't understand." She gave me a withering look. "Love or not, you don't need it. You live in a different city, Sophia. It's a waste." That's when I snapped. Even after the scene at Christmas, she was still acting like an entitled brat, trying to control everything. "Whether I live here or not, this is my house now," I said through gritted teeth. "I don't care what you think I need. So if you would kindly leave, I would like to check out my property in peace. Or would you prefer I call the cops and have you removed for trespassing?" She glared at me, sputtering and turning red, but I held my ground. Finally, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Not before throwing one last venomous remark my way. "You're going to regret this, Sophia. Mark my words." Honestly, I couldn't have cared less. On the drive back to my apartment, I swung by Grandma's senior home and spilled the whole story. She actually laughed when I told her how my mom had barged in with her usual criticisms. "Well," she said, her voice full of amused determination, "the first thing you need to do is change the locks. We can't have her showing up whenever she pleases." "Are you sure about all this, Grandma?" I asked, a little worried about how far this feud might go. I don't want to cause a huge rift in the family. She patted my hand. "Sophia, darling, sometimes a little rift is exactly what's needed. Your mom's been walking all over you for too long. It's time you showed her you mean business. And besides," she added with a wink, "a bit of excitement keeps me entertained here." I couldn't help but smile a little. Leave it to my grandma to find the fun in any situation. Still, as I drove home, my mind was racing. What should I do next? Should I try and rent the house out? Do you guys have any suggestions? Seriously, I'm open to anything. This whole homeowner thing is way more complicated than I imagined. Hi guys, it's been a week since my last update. After that day, I switched the locks and had a new alarm system installed. Yesterday, my phone rang in the middle of a work meeting. It was my mom. Before I could even say hello, she launched into a tirade, yelling about how I was a terrible, ungrateful daughter. How could I treat my own mother this way, blah blah blah. It was the same old song and dance, and honestly, I was starting to tune her out mid-rant. Mama interrupted, trying to stay calm. "You're trespassing on my property. You need to leave." Click. She hung up on me. Typical. I rolled my eyes and tried to get back to my spreadsheet. A few minutes later, my phone blew up again. It was the alarm company, saying that the sensors in my house had been triggered. Panic flared for a second. Was someone breaking in? "It's just my mom," I told the operator, feeling both exasperated and embarrassed at the same time. I called my mom back, my voice sharp with warning. "Mom, listen to me. The police are on their way. If you do not leave right now, you will be arrested." More screaming, a string of insults that would have made a sailor blush, and then the line went dead. That evening, fueled by a mix of anger and determination, I drove over to my mom's place. I didn't even bother going inside. Standing on her doorstep, I took a deep breath to steady my nerves. "Mom," I said, my voice loud and clear in the quiet suburban street, "I'm done playing games. The next time you try something like this, I will file a police report. I'm not kidding. You can't treat me like this anymore." I saw the curtain twitch in the living room window, and I knew she was listening, but I didn't wait for a response. Turning on my heel, I left. My phone buzzed nonstop the whole way home. Texts, voicemails, a whole deluge of words from my mom. I didn't bother to read any of it. I was done. Done with the guilt trips. The endless criticisms masked as concern, done with feeling like I always had to prove myself worthy of her love. Hello everyone, I know it's been a few months since my last update. Honestly, after everything that happened, I just needed to focus on myself for a while and find some peace amidst the chaos. But since you guys were so supportive, I wanted to give you some closure and let you know how things turned out. Well, let's just say my mom's persistence wasn't exactly legendary. She kept calling for a few days straight, leaving increasingly angry voicemails, but eventually, silence. I don't know if she finally got the message or just found someone else to target with her frustrations. Either way, it was a relief. Meanwhile, a big opportunity presented itself at work. They were offering fully remote positions and I jumped at the chance. It felt like the perfect excuse to make a major life change. After weeks of agonizing over how to bring it up with my roommate, who bless her heart is the best, it turned out she was thinking the same thing. The lease was ending and she was eager for a change of scene. So last week, we packed up our city apartment and moved all of our stuff into my grandma's place. Well, let's be real. It's definitely my place now. One of the bedrooms has been transformed into my home office, with my grandma's enthusiastic approval, but we left her room exactly as it was. Living here has turned out to be even better than I imagined. The commute is non-existent, the financial savings are huge, and I get to see my grandma way more often. She's even taken up teaching me a few of her old school baking recipes, and let me tell you, those cookies are dangerous. Thank you all again for your kind comments and suggestions during that whole mess with my mom. It honestly meant the world to know that I had people rooting for me. And now, things feel right. That was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again, and we'll be seeing you in the next one.